They're each trying to get into each other's business. How's this going to work, Brad?
Well, this is fundamentally about future vision, and two companies who were allies now really seeing each other more as competitors. So, as you mentioned, Google was an investor in Uber. A Google senior executive, David Drummond, sits on the Uber board. But the head of the self-driving cars project at Google has been talking, it was at the Detroit Auto Show, and discussing a vision in which these robotic cars, which now may be only a few years away, aren't sold to customers but are offered as an Uber-like service. So that's in the future, maybe not as far away as we might like to hope, maybe a couple years away. And that has Uber worried, because if Google's got a robot car out there, that's probably less expensive.
Well, they get deeper pockets, right? I mean, that's part of the challenge here. And it's one of the challenges you see in general in the tech world. Someone comes up with this great innovative idea, and the question is, how do you grow it, incubate it to the point where it's big enough where you don't have to worry about the competition coming in and stealing it? In Uber's case, already with a $40 billion valuation on it, does this increase its need potentially to go public?
Well, what we also saw this week was Uber opening a research center in Pittsburgh with the help of Carnegie Mellon to investigate autonomous vehicle technology and mapping technology. So basically preparing for a future where they can't rely on Google for some of these technologies. That's a huge capital investment. Google's got a 10-year head start. Potentially, I mean, they've raised a lot of money. They've had no problems tapping the private markets. I don't know that it affects the IPO timeline, but it does show that Uber's got a lot of work to do if it wants to catch up and be relevant in a future where cars are driving themselves.
Why wouldn't Google maybe just go out and make an offer for Uber?
Well, that's a good question. Who knows? Maybe they have. Travis, the CEO of Uber, has talked about being sort of determined to be independent. Of course, there are also other ride-sharing companies like Lyft. But look, Google has a ton of data, right? It has Google Maps. Everyone uses Google's technology.
Including Uber.
That's right, and Lyft. So would they even need to go to acquire, or do they have all the assets and the tools in-house to go spin this up themselves one day when the driverless cars are ready?
Really interesting. I had asked Travis previously about driverless cars and how it would affect his business going forward, and he had made the point that this is something that they really ultimately would be embracing.
That's right, and he has said that to the consternation of his driver community. But look, I think he's realistic about the future. If driverless cars become a reality, and it still seems to me to be wild science fiction, but, at CES, we know that Ford and Mercedes and Audi, we're all talking about this being plausible within the next 5 years. If it becomes a reality, Uber's got to embrace it. It's not really a choice, because that's a fundamentally less expensive ride. It's a true alternative to car ownership. That's really Uber's mission.